Reno. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at InsightLA. And I just wanted to welcome everyone for coming today, for taking your time out of your morning, and for contributing to this fundraiser for InsightLA. All of your contributions together raised $10,700, which is very, very exciting and much needed at this time. So thank you all for your generosity. One thing we like to do with these Zoom calls is have everybody wave hello to one another. It's kind of a nice way. If you go to gallery view or speak in the upper right hand corner, you can see all the friendly faces and scroll across the different pages and see there are 218 people, and the numbers just keep growing. So it's nice to see everyone. You might recognize some friends here. So I just wanted to thank you, Tara, for spending some of your morning with us and for being so generous. We mentioned that we were in financial difficulty, and Tara offered to spend some of her time with us, so we really appreciate that. We're so happy to have you back after just a few months. If you all are not familiar with Tara, you might be amongst the very few people left on planet Earth. Tara is a well-known leading mindfulness teacher. She's got 2.5 million podcast downloads. She founded the Insight meditation community in Washington, D.C. She's the best-selling author of Radical Acceptance and True Refuge. Tara is just such a wonderful human being and teacher, and really such a grounding presence for all of us through this really difficult time that we're all in. So Tara will be beginning, but I just wanted to say one more thing, that there'll be time for question and answer after Tara offers us a practice. And the way that we'll do that is that you can type your question into the chat box, and both I and Akemi Osajima are also going to be the moderators. Akemi is waving. So we will see the questions in the chat box, and we won't be able to get to all of them, but we'll select some questions. We will read the question aloud, and then we'll unmute the person who has asked the question so that you can be in dialogue with Tara. So keep in mind there will probably be some similar questions, and we'll do our best to try to capture the essence of those questions as best we can with the limited time we have. So I just want to thank you all again for coming, and thank you again to Tara. We're so fortunate and delighted to have you here, and I will turn it over to you.
When I was first, this was first mentioned, it was a no-brainer. I love InsightLA. I was out there, as you mentioned, Martin, just a couple of months ago, and it was the last place, other than being here at home, that I visited since the pandemic started. So a real warm feeling. And I noticed on the chat people from elsewhere, including the East Coast. So yeah, welcome to us all. And before we do a meditation inwardly, thought we might just start with a group meditation. We were waving at each other. Just take a moment to look at others on the screen. It's so easy to sense that people are living in this little box on your screen, and just sense other beings in their home and the sweetness of that we're all coming together in some way because we want to be more present and open-hearted. And the nice thing is nobody will know that you're looking right at them, so you can get away with it right now. And yet take in each other, kind of scan around and just feel the basic goodness of who's sitting here, who's looking out through those eyes, the good hearts. You might take a few full breaths. We're going to be starting, as Martin said, right in with a guided meditation. We'll just kind of reflect inwardly and then open it to any questions you have. I'm really looking forward to being together in that way. Anything about navigating this time of crisis, or really any crisis, with an awake heart, a caring heart. So find the way you'd like to settle, and so that you're most comfortable wherever you are. And for many, closing your eyes will help to deepen presence, but it's completely optional. Take a few moments to feel this body sitting here breathing, and let the breath be a way of collecting your attention, letting you know you're right here, right now. In the Buddhist tradition, there's a beautiful expression of the Bodhisattva aspiration, the aspiration of an awakening being. And we're going to reflect on that as a way of opening. The words are, may whatever circumstances arise, whatever circumstances, may they serve to awaken my heart and mind. May they awaken compassion and wisdom. And this means whatever circumstances, including sickness and loss, death, personal failure, and all the different ways it can happen. So it's that deep longing that whatever we encounter in our life becomes part of the path that wakes us up. And you might scan your own life, just sensing where you might be experiencing challenge right now. Somewhere this current crisis or another crisis in your life is really bringing up fear or hurt or confusion or anger, just taking you away from yourself in some way, from your heart. And you might try on this aspiration. Just sense the circumstances that are difficult and feel that sincere place in you that has that intention. May this help me awaken. May this serve compassion and wisdom. And feeling your sincerity that really chooses and loves presence. We'll explore in this meditation a bit more just how these challenges in our life, emotional pain, can be a portal to deepening presence and love. We start in a simple way, awakening our senses. I invite you to scan a bit through your body. Notice if there's areas of particular tightness or tension. What wants to let go right now? Scanning more slowly, you might feel the area of the brow, softening your eyes, and letting your brow be smooth. You can even smile into your eyes, letting the outer corners lift a bit. With a receptive presence, feeling the sensations, the aliveness in the region of the brow. Slight smile at the mouth. Let the inside of the mouth feel like there's a smile there. Relaxing the tongue down to the root. And again, with a receptive presence. Just feeling these sensations and aliveness in the mouth, the gums, the teeth, the tongue, lips. letting that spread through the face. So you can feel the tingling and vibrating aliveness of the face, and the scalp and skull. The eyes still soft, slight smile spreading through the eyes, smile at the mouth. You might visualize and feel the curve of a smile in the throat, just letting the throat fill the whole neck area. And with that receptive presence, feeling the aliveness of sensation in the neck. Allowing your shoulders to fall away from the neck. Letting the shoulders fill with awareness. And wherever there's tightness or tension in the shoulders, letting that float in awareness. Feeling the energy in the arms right down into the hands. Let your hands rest in a very easy, effortless way. You might soften the hands and soften again. And feel from the inside out, letting awareness fill the hand so it's receptive, present to the aliveness right here. And chest is open, belly is soft, letting this next breath be received in a softening belly. This breath. And now this breath. And again. See if you can keep the belly soft as you feel the breath and the awareness fill the whole pelvic region. Receptive presence to the tingling, vibrating aliveness throughout the torso. Aware of your legs, the length, volume, weight. Feeling the feet from the inside out, so you can feel the tingling and vibrating there. Just widen open the attention, letting yourself receive this whole embodied field of sensation. Everything changing, moving, flowing, not stopping anything. This whole dance of aliveness. Including sound. Perhaps these words coming and going. And the soft sounds wherever you are, the space around you. So you're listening to and feeling the whole moment. Receptive presence. And it's from this receptive presence you can explore now, bringing a deep and healing attention to some part of your being that might be calling for that. Invite you to scan your life and sense, as you did a bit earlier, what might be asking for a healing attention. If there's any part of you that wants to be felt, heard, responded to with care. So scanning and sensing if there's a particular way this crisis is impacting you, your health, your finances, dear ones, that's bringing up strong emotion. Might be a background of fear or agitation, loneliness, vulnerability. So in a way, you're inviting whatever in you wants attention to unfold itself. And with whatever you notice now, it might be a slight sense of vulnerability, or it might be very deep fear, or whatever it is that might want attention right now. We begin by just recognizing that. We'll be using the acronym RAIN as we move through this: recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. Just to recognize whatever is presenting itself. You might mentally whisper a word that in some way acknowledges whatever's here. It could be just sleepiness or numbness. It could be that there's some excitement. So it's really whatever is presenting right now. To mentally whisper a word that acknowledges whatever's most predominant. And the A of RAIN is to allow, to really let it just be here. In these moments, in some way you're saying, this belongs, just as a wave belongs on the sea. This is a part of your full experience. Just letting it be. And the I, investigate, is to then bring the awareness fully into the body, sensing where you feel this most fully. You might first sense, well, what's the worst part of this? Just to sense the story in your mind. What are you most afraid is going to happen? What does it really mean to you? What's the part that's most disturbing? And feel your throat, your chest, your belly, and sense where emotion might live, where the felt senses might be most vulnerable. Investigate is this kind of courage to feel directly the feelings that are here. And you might even put your hand on your heart or wherever you feel feelings right now. Even the slightest bit of vulnerability, just letting your hand contact that place is a way of beginning the nurturing and actually deepening attention. So just breathe with what you feel. It's this receptive presence. It's allowing it to be here and willing to contact, be intimate with what's within you. And you might sense what this part of you that's been activated or triggered most needs right now. What's the flavor of love or nurturing it most needs? And does it need forgiveness or acceptance? Does it need understanding? Does it need some message that it's okay, that there's goodness inside you? Does it need love, compassion? And as you attend in this way, you might sense yourself opening to really inhabit your most awake heart and offer to the part of you that's having a hard time some nurturing. And it might be that you send through your hand some warmth and tenderness. And it might be you send a message to the vulnerable place, something like, thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm okay right now. Or I'm not leaving, I'm here with you. Or I care about the suffering. Please feel my love. Some message. And you might experiment on whatever brings healing inwardly. And if it's hard to give a message yourself to your inner life, imagine the message or the healing and loving coming from some other source. A friend that you trust, your dog, a spiritual figure, the natural world. Let your intention be to let in care. And notice what happens when there's nurturing. Taking these last few moments to just sense the quality of presence that's here. And whatever shift there's been from the fearful self or the angry self to this space of compassionate awareness. Because this is more the truth of who you are than any story that you could tell yourself, this presence. We'll close with a short poem by the poet Roshani Ray. She writes, there's a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There's a sorrow beyond all grief which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. There's a hollow space too vast for words through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There's a cry deeper than all sound whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside that is unbreakable and whole. Blessings, my friends. Thank you for being willing to go inward and explore what's here. And so we'll open now to questions that you might have.
Taro, who was the author of that poem?
The author's name is Roshani Ray. And I love it, and I shared it because we started with that Bodhisattva aspiration that may whatever circumstances awaken. And the teaching really on the path is that when we're willing to open to the circumstances and what's been really triggered in us, that does become a portal to being awake and whole. We kind of, there's a shattering, and then we discover the unshatterable. So it felt like a kind of fitting poem for us today.
We have a couple questions coming in. The first one is from Bob, who's asking, how do we work with the incredibly strong anger that arises when we see national leaders make bad comments and decisions? So I'm unmuting you, Bob, if you'd like to elaborate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and feel free to say more.
Well, I mean, it's that reactivity when we watch the news and we see this incredible amount of disregard and over concern about the economics and not concerned with the tragedy of so many deaths. And that reactivity is really palpable, really palpable. How do we work with that?
Just to ask you what you're discovering so far in working with it.
It's important to own it, so I'm not shying away from it, and I'll stay with it for quite a long time and just let it kind of dissipate. So, I mean, I can work with it, but are there any other tools? And for maybe beginners who are just starting to realize how active, it's kind of like when my wife and I watch the news. She isn't a meditator. She doesn't have the grounding that I might have, but the intense reactivity is just something hard. It's like, how can you help folks, or how can we work with this?
Well, first, I'm really glad that you asked this, and I'm glad it's the question out, because it's such a huge thing for so many of us, that amidst this and amidst the heartbreak, that agitation, that leadership is actually causing more deaths, and the helplessness in the face of that, and the anger. I'll speak for myself. On the more surface levels, is I actually am titrating how much news I take in, just because it agitates. And so I'm being really careful on that. For the last 20 years, I think it was since we attacked Iraq, I started figuring that I had to learn to work with my anger that was targeted at certain humans that were in power, and because it wasn't helping. And so I started this kind of meditative process of, when I would feel angry, and I still do it, and it happens daily, that I'll pause and I'll sense underneath the anger. It's part of RAIN, recognize and allow, and then investigate, and I'll sense what's in there. And underneath the anger is typically a fear and a helplessness.
Yeah.
And if I open to that, really open to the fear, I usually get to a kind of grieving place. I just feel so much sorrow for how many people are suffering right now and always. And when I can get to that sorrow, Bob, then what's under that is caring. And if I can touch the caring, then I can look again at those I'm angry at, and I can feel with discriminating wisdom that they are incompetent, but my heart is not clutched in anger. And to add to that, we need to act. that the anger is a message that there's an obstacle to something we believe in. And so each one of us needs to, in our own way, engage as citizens on this planet and make sure that we vote, and that we probably take care of absentee voting, and that everybody we know and love, we get to vote. And there's more than voting, but I'm just naming that right now because it's on the top of my mind. So that's a little bit of a long-winded response, but I think we need to go to the layers underneath the anger in order to come back home to our own hearts. So thank you. And I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Zoe, who's asking, how do I show and share my vulnerability with my family, especially my teenage son, without scaring him? And I'm here to protect him. And Zoe, go ahead, you're unmuted.
Hi.
Hi, Zoe. Thank you for that. So let me just ask you that you said, how do I show my vulnerability to my teenage son and have him still feel that he's safe and protected by you?
Yeah, right. I guess that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So is the fear that if he sees you vulnerable, then he'll feel like, uh-oh, there's really a problem out there and there's nothing to protect me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It always depends on the emotional resilience of the person. You know, there's some people that it's not going to help you or them to be vulnerable with them. It may be unsafe for you, and they may not have the resilience. But assuming a reasonable amount of resilience, these are the times to let it be okay that we're vulnerable, and to know that in being vulnerable, there's actually a strength. And the strength is a sense of our mutual caring and that we belong to something more. From what I keep on re-encountering over and over again, vulnerability is not okay, and we get really contorted into suffering when we forget that we're in it together. So in a way, if you can let your teenage son, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Know, that like him, you're feeling, the same shakiness, but it's not your fear or his fear, it's really the world's fear right now. When I first became really aware of this pandemic, I remember when it kind of hit me all at once, about a month ago, or longer maybe. I was meditating by the river where I usually meditate, and my pregnant daughter-in-law, nurse at UCSF, and the risk to the family, and then beyond that, the widening rings. I went to the refugees in camps, and I just really got it how many people are vulnerable and going to suffer. And I felt so much agitation and fear, and I did the whole process of being with the fear. And when I was resting, and after the rain, resting in that presence, it became so clear to me that it wasn't my fear, that it really was the world's fear. And in knowing it's the world's fear, you also realize you're the compassion of the world. You're kind of, the Sufis say, the mother of the universe, holding a part of the world's pain in your heart. You realize that belonging, that larger belonging. So now that might sound like, well, what does that have to do with my teenage son? But it has to do with you and how you're holding it. And if you let him know your vulnerability and frame it as, this is the vulnerability everybody's feeling, and it's actually because we all care, that it may be a way that he can join you and actually bring more intimacy and more strength. Does that resonate for you, or does it bring up questions?
It does. There's security in holding it collectively, like we all are sharing this pain, or so, and then I feel like if I articulate that incorrectly, then it becomes everybody's terrified and everybody's panicked in the world and we're all and then it becomes a different thing because I'm not articulating or can't stay in the present as I'm talking to him because I get, does that make sense?
Totally. So that would say that we need to usually ground ourselves first before any such conversation. Feel the vulnerability, but also feel what you belong to. So it's a transmission for him. It's not just your words, it's actually the vibe.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
As a nice follow-up question to that, Jane asks, how do we work with the powerlessness of the current situation that we find ourselves in? Jane, you're unmuted. One sec. Martin, could you help me unmute Jane? My button's not working. Oh, there you go. You're unmuted, Jane.
Yes.
Ah, I see you. I was looking around to see where you were. Thank you, Jane, for that. How to deal with the powerlessness. I'm going to ask a little bit in the same way I asked Bob, if you could just share where that question comes from you and what you're noticing so far, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yes. Okay. First, I just want to apologize for the snoring dogs in the background, but they follow me wherever I go these days.
I've got one right over there.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought that I understood powerlessness, and it has reared its head to me in a way that is overwhelming. And it's sort of a daily sort of realization of really things can just go off the rails, and I can't control it. And so I guess for me that brings up this sense of a new sense of vulnerability in myself that I wasn't really accessing. And then just a lot of fear and, grief. So.
Is there anything thus far you're finding that helps you when you're in the midst of it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, breathing and sitting and meditating, sometimes just putting my dog on my lap and feeling him breathing helps. It's more in those moments of when I'm going throughout my day and, just encountering various levels of people's reactions to this crisis. And you have people that seem to fall into one of two camps. Either they think it's a nothing burger, or, people are terrified. And so I want to stay with my own sense of what this is, without letting other people sort of dictate my reaction. Does that make sense?
Sure. And because what you described are the extremes of either being totally possessed or denial. And it sounds to me like you're trying to stay honestly acknowledging danger, but not feeling possessed and overwhelmed by it. And so that's what you just described as what you're trying to find is, in a way, the response to powerlessness. The reality, the deep truth is, if we're identified with a self, that self is powerless. It's only an illusion we're ever controlling anything. But given that, when fear comes up because of powerlessness, the refuge really is only in the present moment. Like if you can really nail the attention to just this, and now just this, and now just this, you can come back to a kind of balance and steadiness that isn't possessed and isn't denying. but what it's a two-step, which is to recognize the thoughts going around in the mind, like, you know, whatever the thoughts are about people that are completely caught in it, or the deniers, or whatever the thoughts are that trigger off powerless, and say, okay, come from here into the body, and just come into your body and breathe. And if your body feels scary, go to the part of your body that doesn't feel scared, the hands, but breathe. And then just remind yourself of the things right here around you. You know, touch, feel the texture of your shirt, but this could be just in 15 seconds. We're not talking about a long process, but go from your head into your body and reground yourself in presence. Because from there, yes, it's still scary, but you're not going to be caught in where the mind takes us, which is either to push it away or to get lost. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're all in the not able to control it mode together, really. So thank you for that one, dear. Yeah. Yeah.
So one question we have from Cassie: any tips or tools in dealing with distance from loved ones? Particularly for me, I'm across the country from my parents and find them so far, even though I can sometimes get to a place of presence where I feel like I'm with them. But the distance is adding to the fear.
Yeah. I'm waiting to
Cassie, you're
see
unmuted.
who that is.
Hi.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Cassie.
Hi. Thank you for everything too. This is such an honor.
Oh, total
Yeah, thank
pleasure.
you.
Yeah. So you're across the country from beloveds, and
Yeah, and they're okay. So in a way, I feel like I should be happy about it, but they both tested positive for it last weekend. But there seem to be fast symptoms, so I think that they're okay. And my dad is going through a great loss of his best friend earlier in the week, and I just don't. It's adding to the fear. What if I never see them again? Which I know could be anytime, not in a COVID crisis, being this far from them. But it's just really adding to the looking into the future, fear of right now, and just questions I don't have answers to of when I can see them.
yeah, I wonder how many others of us gathered are having something similar, that were cut off from dear ones. I certainly am. You know, I've got my son, daughter-in-law, and grandchild out on the West Coast, and I'm here, and in a way we all are, because we're with our own, either alone or with people that we're living with, but that's it. So what I'm finding helps me is deepening metta meditation. So deepening my time with them. This is a little bit of an example that after my mother died, you know, I felt that grief of that loss, but whenever I did a real meditation, just invoking her spirit and a sense of her dearness, and I could, it wouldn't have mattered if she was alive and across the country or what, I could feel the immediacy and presence of the loving connection. As soon as you can tap into that, then in those moments, it doesn't matter where they are. And that you can build that. So you really feel like how you're using this time of separation is deepening a much more profound intrinsic sense of connectedness that can carry you at all times. Just use this time for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does
Thank
that
you.
resonate?
Yeah. It's total shift of perspective on it too. I really thank you. Thank you.
Be well, dear.
Thank you.
We have a question from Heidi. Any tips on how to handle the anxiety from feeling the need to overwork? Constantly feeling like need to overwork to feel job security, but I feel resentment and anxiety when working so much at home. Go ahead, Heidi.
There you are. Hi. So let me just to get clear. So it's how to feel the anxiety that comes from overwork, but that you're doing it at home, and that creates more anxiety.
Yeah, like there's no space at home that.
Ooh, can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, that's better.
There's no space at home that I can feel like I'm working, that I'm not working from.
You mean, in other words, at home, you always feel like you're working, or there's no way
Yes.
to actually work in a way that feels productive?
Yeah, I feel like I always have, I'm an attorney, so I have billable hours. So I feel like I have to hit the same marks I was before, but I'm not working in a regular space where that's as easy. So I feel a lot of anxiety because I'm always trying to overachieve. And then I get resentful that some people get to just take walks in the middle of the day and I don't get that opportunity because I feel if I don't hit this mark, then I don't have job security.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for that, because it's really interesting, our relationship to work. And I feel like this pandemic has shaken everybody's relationship with work in some way. And some of us have the actual great privilege of being able to work from home. Yours has got a torque on it, where you're, you know, can I reach the billable hours? And for job security, some people have lost all job security because they didn't have the kind of job where they could transfer it. And it's very much a class thing right now. In fact, the pandemic affects us incredibly unequally, but it's affecting all of us. And I too get to work from home, and other people do, and yet it has a different twist to it. So for you, it's shining a really important light on where your deep anxiety is, that the job security. And the question I would have for you is, have you worked with that, and what have you noticed when you try to bring attention to that anxious place thus far?
I've been working on it. I've done your course on resentment and anger. So definitely have, and tried to build a looser schedule, trying to just unwind those years of over productivity, you know, and just find some space. But there'll still be days where I thought I had a plan and something throws it off, and something that normally would take me an hour takes me 3 hours because of the way we're working remotely now. And then I get anxious and angry.
Yeah. And so do you, when it happens now, are you able to pause and practice with that some, or do you feel like because you're so busy and trying to get things done, you kind of just keep going?
I've kind of learned to stop and just take it's as a sign that there's no, if my computer can't connect to the internet, it's not meant for me to be there, and stop wasting the time of going in circles to fix it, and just give myself some more time. But if there's anything else that you suggest, that would be great.
To do just what you do, which is stop, pause, and get that it's not in the cards right now. But to use that as an opportunity to bring the potential for you around the corner is to have a little more freedom and space around that fear that you're not going to get it enough and something very bad's going to happen to you, like you'll lose your job. So to be able to hold that with a little more space and a little more compassion will be very freeing. So when you get into that stuck place, I would pause then and take like the 3 long deep breaths to get yourself settled, and sense the anxious part, and sense what would be the message that would be most comforting, just some gesture of kindness inward. So it becomes a habit that when you get triggered, you pause, you breathe, and you offer something kind. You may not notice a big shift, but there'll be a little shift. And here's what's interesting about it. And it has to do with neural pathways and habits. And you've had a habit probably for a long time of feeling anxious and angry around getting things done and what's going to happen. Anytime you can interrupt that, you have a potential of rewiring your brain. That's kind of what it comes down to. use the pandemic. I mean, this is a great time. Your life's habits are kind of thrown askew. Use it, because you can come out of it the other end, as I said, not so much identified as the anxious self that has to get things done, and a little more as that compassionate space that's in relationship to that self. And that's where the freedom is. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well,
Thank you.
blessings. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So a question we have from here is, how do you balance the emotions and holding the horror of loss at all levels? And in the meantime, how some people see it as a retreat and a blessing?
No, no.
Hi there. I'm not sure I totally heard the question, so I'd love to hear it again.
No. They want to hear from me and I don't want to go.
I'm not sure what's going on, but if Kemi, if you want to repeat it, that would be fine. Or
Sure. Yeah. So the question is, how do you balance all of the emotions and holding the horror of loss of all levels, and how some people are treating this time as a retreat and a blessing. So I think just the
okay, yeah. So this is really this is a bit of, it sounds to me a bit of a sensitivity to privilege, and that for some people, here we are, we get to work from home or get to hang out at home, and there's not a major challenge with health or finances. And for so many others, not having the luxury of being able to stay at home because of the kind of work they do, and being under much greater risk, whether it's because of economic, not having money, whether it's because of being a person of color who's going to be much more inclined to contract the virus and die of it. We're getting the statistics, but it's very, as I mentioned, it's very unequal. So how do we balance our pain around that with that? For some, it has the, it creates a container for deepening practice in a more pleasant retreat-like way. And I'm not sure they have to be considered finding a balance. I think that in a way we just have to include everything. I know for myself that including everything means, because I have a very comfortable environment right now, it means on purpose reaching out and connecting with those that are suffering and engaging in a way that I'm part of it, because I am part of it, and that lets me know that. And it also, and that doesn't mean I've been actually taking more time to meditate. It's felt really important, kind of bookending my day, where I start my day with a practice, and then I have this prayer, to just move through as sensitive and open-hearted and real as I can. At the end of the day, I practice and I kind of ask myself, so what was it like? And I see where I was real and tender, and I also see the places that I was completely on automatic. And I don't get caught in, actually that isn't a moment of judgment. It's more deepening the resolve to show up. So I think it's important, if this time gives us more space and so on, to make use of it. And as part of that, because we can't be awake unless we're including the suffering of others, to actively engage and reach out and connect. So I'm thinking of it as a both and. I hope that's a helpful response.
Thanks, Tara. So this question is from Megan. I've been thinking a lot about what happens after this, which actually overwhelms me in some ways more than the now. I've been wondering, and I recognize my privilege in being able to do this, how to make this time better spent so that when this is over, we don't go back to normal, but we find a better, more grounded, more communal, more compassionate place. You're unmuted.
Hi, Tara.
Hey, hi,
I
Megan.
was really not expecting to have that read and might have said a curse word when you said my name there. Thank you so much. I have really been pondering, and I really do recognize my place of privilege in this. But being pretty financially okay, I think, I'm not sure about my job yet, but being financially okay and in a space where I have a nice home and I'm trying to be reflective, I just keep thinking, people keep saying the phrase, when we go back to normal. And I'm thinking that that might not be our best way to go. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts as we begin to rebuild, just about how to stay centered, or if you've been thinking similar things and reflecting on that. I've found this group, this InsightLA, to be so incredible, and I'm just really grateful for all the people on it and getting to hear about this.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually glad you brought this up, and I have a feeling it's our last question given the timing. So, and it's actually quite appropriate. There's no such thing in my mind as going back to normal. You know, it's the world is irrevocably changing, but it always has been. This is just more evident. And through history, whenever there's been a major disturbance, it's been a time where, for many, it's been very adaptive. Like, we actually draw on our resilience, and we actually get more intelligent and get more compassionate. I'm talking about the species. Like 10 to 20,000 years ago, there was big disruption, and humans became more collaborative, and we expanded our caring to kin group, and we were able to actually have a bigger, larger network in our brain for compassion and social relating. So I think that's the potential here, is that when things fall apart for us personally, I mean, each one of you, if you reflect on your own life, you probably can see where the moments where things really hit bottom, the big breakup, the health challenge, the big loss, it kind of breaks open something deeper in you can come through, some deeper wisdom or caring. That's the prayer. So part of this is having that intention for that we really have the intention, both in our own waking up and collectively, that this deep and loving, that we become more caring, and then to act on it and not wait, which means to be reaching out. Doing what we're doing right now really matters. Like, I look around and I see your faces, and it tenderizes my heart. It's like, we are friends, we're part of something larger, and that's the energy that inspires me to be more active in the world, that we're holding hands. So reach out, hold hands. It can be around any area that is yours to move forward on it. Different people have different areas to be active in, but this is one of those kind of Bodhisattva times where the more we're intentional about planting the seeds for a better world, the more it'll happen. And meditation is all about waking up that intentionality. So I hope that's helpful for you.
So helpful. You're a treasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, dear. Yeah, so I'm sensing, Akimi, that this is our time to shift gears. Thank you for moderating us and bringing the questions in. Yeah, and thank you, all of you, for your questions. We'll do a little bit of a closing practice. As we did at the beginning, you might settle back. Might feel your breath. Invite yourself right here. You might sense right now, again, as we did earlier, your aspiration. It may be the words of the Bodhisattva, may this, whatever's arising, awaken compassion and wisdom. And it may be something different. It may be your own way of wanting to wake up more presence, more open-heartedness, to not be caught in fear, to be more intimate with others, and to help our hurting world. Whatever your language is. And you might gently scan through your own body and heart and sense if there's any vulnerability that just wants to be included right now in awareness. It's amazing if we can just even acknowledge, oh, okay, this is here, and breathe with it a little. Offer a kind attention where it's not so sticky. So you might sense just for a few moments what it's like to offer some gesture of care to your inner life. And then from that heart space, you might bring to mind a dear one who you sense is having a hard time. And bring that person close in your attention. And just as in rain, we recognize and allow and investigate inwardly, you can recognize, oh, this hard time, and allow, give space for that being to be struggling in some way, and bring your attention closer, investigating, well, what's it like being you right now? What's it like? What's hard? The same way you might put your hand on your own heart and offer a message of care. Just imagine some way energetically hugging that person, or hand on their cheek or shoulder, and whisper. And because you're home and maybe nobody's around, you might whisper the person's name and some wish for their well-being. Feel heart space that's here, and letting it be as large as it is, bringing to mind a person you know who's different from you in some way, different in race, class, or political beliefs, some way different, so that there may be some feeling of distance. And you might ask that same question, investigating, well, what's it like being you? What might you be struggling with? How are you feeling the world's fears? In some way offering a gesture of care, of kindness. And feeling the openness of that heart space, holding your own being, holding a dear one, difficult one. Sensing the shared vulnerability, the world's fear that's being held in a spacious and open heart. Writer L.R. Nost says, "Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break, and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in the darkness for the light that is you." So we close, my friends, sensing that our shared light is holding our hurting world, which it is. Wishing for the healing and freedom of suffering of all who are in difficulty. Holding tenderly those who are most vulnerable, the elderly, the unwell, those who are getting blamed or targeted, those with little financial cushion, those from non-dominant parts of the population that are most being impacted, all beings, just holding all beings. Feeling we're holding the earth, our mother, with all the dis-ease, our climate emergency. Holding all beings, all life, in loving awareness. May all beings realize this loving awareness as our source. May all beings live from loving awareness. May all beings everywhere touch a natural and great peace. May there be peace on earth, peace everywhere. May all beings awaken and be free. Namaste, and thank you for being part of this.
Thank you so much, Tara. We so appreciate you, and thank you to everyone who participated today and made a donation. Our signature closing at InsightLA is to unmute everyone and allow everybody to say goodbye as they make their way onto their next things in their day. So thank you again, Tara. We're so grateful to you.
Thank you.
And for a full list of InsightLA's online offerings, go to insightla.org/online. Excited to see you all again soon, and I will unmute.
Yeah, he doesn't have his ancestors all happy about that.
Thank you very much.
Good
Thank you
day,
very much.
everyone. Big quizzes at the end of each week for language, arts, and math.
All right.
Like maybe, 15, 20 questions, very simple multiple choice. Not even 15. He did get, Massachusetts Math and Language Arts got together and got all the kids on Zoom Wednesday.
That's cool.
Just very formal, just so they could talk and see each other and say one thing that